Hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar with Rob Bates. Rob has worked for 22 years at JCK, America's leading jewelry trade publication, which celebrated its 150th anniversary last year. Rob serves as JCK Online's news director and has won numerous editorial awards. He recently published his first novel, A Diamond Industry Murder Mystery, A Murder is Forever. Find out more info about the book at robbatesauthor.com. That's the book that he's showing on camera. GemAtlas is a global B2B networking platform for the gems and jewelry industry. We help you connect with businesses and professionals around the world. You can easily start generating new business leads through our platform. We are honored to have this discussion, and the topic for today is striving and thriving in the new diamond world. There will be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to enter your questions below and have them answered at the end of this presentation. Over to you, Rob.
Hi, everybody. Is my screen? I'm sharing my screen now, right? Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to having an interesting, lively discussion. Basically, the idea is to give an overarching view of where we are from a retail standpoint, from a diamond industry standpoint, to look at what's happening with lab grown, which is always a hot topic, to figure out where the industry's opportunities are, and also where some of the challenges are, because I think we've seen that this industry has faced a lot of challenges, and we've exited COVID, this crazy COVID period. And I obviously, before we start, I just want to wish everybody the best and hope everybody's staying safe and healthy, and hopes to, we'll get vaccinated and is taking proper precautions. And where are we now? I mean, what happens? We know, lab grown diamonds are still a huge factor in the market. There's been a lot of issues caused by that. There's been a lot of issues caused by COVID. So where do we stand now? So this is my attempt, I guess, to look at that and to examine some of the big issues. And obviously, I'm going to be looking. I'm in the United States. I haven't left the United States for the last year. I try to talk to people from all over the world, but my viewpoint is, especially lately, mostly an American one. So it's going to be chosen in that. But, the United States is the biggest market still, and it's still a huge market for diamonds. So let's look at where we are post-COVID. The industry is starting to recover, actually, in a nice way, and it's clearly benefited from the lack of travel dollars, the fact that people aren't traveling. And in the United States, we have a lot of disposable income. The government's given a lot of money away. People, you just end up saving a lot when you stay at home all the time. You don't go out to dinner. I used to ride the subway every day. I don't anymore. Those kind of savings add up. So people have a lot of disposable income, and one of the easiest things to do when you're sitting at home doing nothing is to shop, right? I mean, because what else are you going to do? It gives you that kind of quick serotonin rush. Hey, I bought a nice piece of jewelry, and I've definitely bought a lot of things that I haven't need, and I haven't necessarily have used for, just because you're just sitting around and it's so easy right now to do. So I think the industry has benefited from the lack of travel dollars. We'll see what's going to happen in the second half when people start traveling again, because I mean, one of the reasons this is such a big issue is because if you look at what are the biggest competitors for consumer dollars as far as diamond jewelry, it's always been travel. I would say there's signs as far as natural diamonds that industry marketing is starting to have an impact. If you look at the strongest markets right now, they're the United States and in China, and in both of them, the Natural Diamond Council is very active. And one of the I think is positive is it's not necessarily as in the past taken a confrontational stand against lab growns. It has perhaps one or two occasions, but generally it's ignored them. And I think the thought is, and from what I understand, there's a lot of tension there because I think a lot of people, in the industry want to take them on in a more aggressive way. But you look at, these commercials that the Natural Diamond Council has run with this woman, this Bond girl who's on, there's commercials of her on the beach and she has diamonds all over. Like, what's really going to drive demand for diamonds? I mean, we can sit and argue about, kilowatts per hour and enduring value and all this stuff. But in the end, you want to drive demand for the product. You don't want to make it an intellectual discussion because diamonds have never been a product that necessarily appeal to people on an intellectual level, right? It's always been about feelings and about how people perceive the product and what it means to them and what it makes them feel good, right? Diamonds should make people feel good. And that's what I believe industry marketing has always been successful at doing. And that's perhaps where we've gotten off the track in the last couple of years. If you think about it, so we have as an industry, for years, we all depended on De Beers marketing, and I think for years the budget was set at $200 million, right? Then you have so that budget was set for a certain level, right, of demand. Then all of a sudden, for about a decade, the budget drops to a fraction of that, right? So obviously that's going to have an out that's going to hurt demand. I mean, that's just the way it works, right? That if you don't advertise, you can't expect to have the same level of demand as you did the previous years, right? I mean, that's, at some point, maybe 1 year, it doesn't matter, 2 years, doesn't matter, but down the road, people are going to be start thinking about other things. So one of the most important things that I believe the industry needs to do is to get its message out and to communicate more with the consumer, right? Let's talk more. Let's have more of a dialogue. Let's understand what people want. Right now, obviously, the industry supply chain is disrupted in India because of the situation with COVID there. So that's been an issue. But one of the interesting facts I recently heard is that people, the industry tends to go into boom and bust cycles, and I think there was a little bit of a chance of overheating prior to all this. One person told me that the levels of stock in India in early March were above what they were the year before pre-COVID, right? So that the levels of stock in early March this year were higher than they were last year, and last year was right before COVID. So there was clearly a bit of overheating. So perhaps some of these supply chain disruptions will cause it to cause the pipeline to empty out a little bit. But what I think is good is that the industry, and this is probably this shown time again, has shown itself to be resilient and adaptable and flexible if it needs to be. And I guess the question, though, we do have to ask is why does this industry constantly find itself in crises, right? Because we've had about maybe 3 or 4 crises in the last 10 years. And obviously, like some things like the financial crisis and COVID, that's not necessarily the industry's fault. But the fact is that, there have been crises that have been, the rest of the world was fine and the diamond industry was in its own kind of individual meltdown. And I think one of the issues that we're seeing is this kind of boom and bust cycle, which I'd like to talk about in a bit. Um, Talk a little bit about retail post COVID. Obviously, the big thing is omni-channel. I think that's a big message that American retailers have learned, that you can't just have a store. You need a store and a website. Online sales have gained rapidly, and there's a lot of people who never shopped online before, and are become committed online shoppers. They never really did it, and because they were just used to it, and now they're in the habit of shopping online. And the thing is, once you develop habits, they can take a while to break. Like, for example, I'm fully vaccinated and I wear a mask, and I don't necessarily need to wear a mask at this point, but most people I know wear masks. You're asked to wear masks and you kind of get in the habit. And eventually hope to get rid of the masks, because, not that I don't find them terrible. They're fine, but people get into habits. And there's certain COVID habits that we've adopted that we would never think we would adopt, that now, we may be stuck with for a while. So I think we're going to see a lot more on shopping, online shopping. I would say, especially in the United States, if you're a retailer, and you've decided to kind of make it through this year, you're more committed, right? Because I think last March, people had a choice. They said, either we're going to just pack it in, and just we can close the store. They're asking us to close the store, and we can either close the store now, or we can really commit to meeting the new challenge, the new consumer, to becoming more virtual, to integrating online features into a presentation. And I think a lot of them have. So I think we're going to see in the United States a lot of store closings this year, simply because last year was not a good time to close a store. And we'll probably see a lot of the natural attrition. We didn't see a lot of store closings last year. And again, the guess is that, if you're going to have a kind of liquidation sale, you can't do it with nobody on the street, nobody shopping. But my sense and my guess is that we'll probably see a lot this year. However, I think what's good is that retailers are a lot smarter. They're doing things they never thought they would do. They're doing delivery. They're doing, curbside pickup. They're really becoming more creative in how they handle things. So I think that's interesting. They're doing visual online consultations, which is interesting. I mean, JCK did a focus group at the end of last year, and it's called the Jewelry Commercial Roundup, and we talked to a whole bunch of women in their 20s. And if you can, I recommend you would Google that. Maybe I'll put the link at the end. What we found was very interesting. First of all, we asked people, we showed them a bunch of TV commercials from Zales and Kay, and one of the interesting things was that this was, I think, 10 women. Most of them hadn't even seen the commercials, right? Because where do they shop? They shop on Instagram, right? Instagram is where they look and they see, and they were very interested in seeing product, because Instagram is very focused on products. So it's become a huge a huge platform for sales. So in that way, it's a very different customer. And one of the things they said also was that, if I'm shopping online and I have a question, it'd be nice to have somebody to answer that question. And I think that's where we're getting into things like visual consultations and online consultations. So it's um, it's reaching the customers in different ways than you have before, but in the same way, making sure you communicate with them, just communicating that with them using these new tools. Okay, so let's talk about lab grown diamonds. They're starting to really disrupt, quote unquote, the industry. They're clearly having an effect. They're clearly taking market share away from natural diamonds, and yet at the same time, natural diamond sales are relatively healthy. And I think the question is, we just saw Pandora jump in. I don't think that was a huge surprise, given that they're a low end brand. And I think the question is, who's the next to jump in? Signet. Will Signet really put a lot of money behind a lab grown diamond brand? And I think a lot of the big brands like Signet are kind of in a difficult position because they have um, billions of dollars in natural diamond inventory, and the basis of their business has always been natural diamonds, and they have issues with the trade-in stuff, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So what do they do? And I think also, there's certainly, when I talk to lab grown people, they also they a lot of them are convinced that Tiffany might jump in perhaps with a silver brand, silver jewelry brand. I mean, I can't see a Tiffany or an LVMH type brand um, going bridal for lab grown, but perhaps for fashion, similar to what Pandora is doing. I think that's certainly very possible. Um, and we'll see. I think I think there's the sentiment about this product is all over the map. I think consumer feelings about this product are all over the map. Some love it, some don't love it. A lot of the people in the trade are extremely ambivalent about it, but some have really, jumped in. They appreciate the bigger margins, and it's something that's still kind of working itself out. I think it's in flux, and I think we're not 100% sure where everything's going to land at this point. Uh, they're a unique threat in that they're cheaper. I mean, I assume most people know this, that they have better margins currently, at least for jewelers. You're dealing with companies that a lot of venture funds, some of them have big marketing budgets. Natural diamond production is falling, and the producers are perhaps somewhat cynically at times taking advantage of the industry's issues, concerns about conflict diamonds, about human rights, concerns about the environment, and of course they are quote unquote real diamonds. So, as much as the industry's tried to portray them as something akin to cubic zirconia and to moissanite, they're a very different type of product. So I think with lab grown diamonds, there's two challenges that the industry faces. There's the gemological challenge, and there's the marketing challenge. The gemological challenge, I think, is mostly handled. Um, they are detectable. We are still seeing plenty passed off as natural and plenty of quote unquote mixing, especially in the smaller sizes. That's happening a lot. And that's certainly happening in the business. And the more the price differential between natural and lab grown diamonds increases, and it certainly is, the more incentive there is to cheat, right? When these things were 20% cheaper, there was less of an incentive to cheat. But now we're talking about, so in some cases, several $1,000 differences between the natural and the lab growns. And there's a lot incentive perhaps to cheat. And I just want to remind everybody that in the United States, you have to disclose how that they're sold, and there are very specific rules for disclosure. And there are some people who like to skirt those rules and be clever with those rules. And it's been going on for a long time. And At this point, we're hoping, and we keep hearing that there's going to be a bit of a crackdown from the federal authorities, that a lot of these companies have been warned time and time again, and they keep being cued, and they keep trying to play this down because they want more money for the product, and you make more money for a natural diamond than for a lab grown diamond. So there are a lot of detectors in the market. There's no easy black box to identify lab grown diamonds, but there are detectors. They are detectable. Most jewelers should, especially with trade-ins, and certainly when they take goods in from suppliers, they should perhaps give them a look, just to make sure, just because there is this stuff going on, that people are trying to pull things and sell diamonds with phony reports, as GIA said this week. Um, One thing I would caution people is that most detectors use fluorescence, so as a way to detect the diamonds. So now we're seeing some people deliberately make these diamonds without fluorescence in order to fool the detectors. The only reason you would do that is to fool a detector. So again, these are there's challenges. I think we've been very fortunate in that so far all of these things are detectable, and uh, the industry's been able to meet the challenge, not perhaps not perfectly, but we're close to there, and I think that's something that's going to be hopefully sorted out soon. So let's talk about the marketing challenge. There's, I would say there's three possible scenarios for where lab grown diamonds goes. Here's the kind of best scenario for the lab grown industry, that the kind of cultured pearl model, where the kind of quote unquote upstart takes over and the incumbent loses favor. That it becomes like cultured pearls, where basically everything is a cultured pearl, or not everything, but most of the things sold in the market are cultured pearls. That diamond mines start to dry out, and new mines are considered economically feasible. People will still buy natural diamonds for special stones, for rare stones, for big stones, but there'll be more of a kind of higher end niche item. And certainly when you talk about lab grown diamonds, again, there's a variety of opinions, but I think the general feeling is that millennials and Gen Z have less objections to the concept. That's the first scenario, right? The second scenario is something that a lot of people haven't thought about, is the idea of product differentiation kind of disappearing. So it all just becomes diamonds, right? Now you look at, let me look at this diamond bracelet that I have on my screen here. There's like several, a lot of these diamonds have several hundred diamonds in them. A lot of these bracelets, I should say, have several hundred diamonds in them. Now, does it matter if three of them are lab grown? Does anyone really care? Is that a big deal to people, considering the diamonds aren't necessarily that great in the first place? The whole idea of enduring value and all these things, matters less on the low end goods. So, we may see a situation where you say this is a diamond bracelet, and then and especially for the low end goods, and then you put an asterisk, and the asterisk will say could be lab grown, could be natural, could be both. It's not necessarily that important for these kind of goods. And again, I think you could see that in the low end jewelry. The second scenario three is what I would call the shadow model, not necessarily, cutting against him, but the idea of, what's happened to the colored stones, um, as far as, they've become kind of considered this low end item that doesn't necessarily compare to the natural version. I've said the story before. My wife has her engagement ring was diamonds and sapphires, and we both knew, since we both work in the industry, that you know uh, lab grown or synthetic sapphires exist. I mean, it wasn't a secret. Um, but we just went for the naturals just because we considered that was the kind of that was the kind of item that we expected on our engagement ring, as far as the price point, as far as what was available. And it's not like I don't like to save money, because I can tell you I like to save money, but we just considered it a different item. And one of the things that's interesting about lab grown is a very different way of looking at diamonds, because I at one point the people at Lightbox sent me a 1 carat uh diamond, because I'd been talking a lot about how you can't find any 1 carat diamonds on the site. And so they gave me this 1 carat diamond, which I guess sells for $800 on the site. And it's a beautiful piece. It's a lovely diamond. And we gave it to my mother-in-law, right? So we gave her this piece, and as far as I know, she wears it sometimes. And but I don't necessarily know where it is. I haven't really kept track of it. And certainly, if that was a I don't want to say real, but if that was a natural diamond, or if that was what we call a standard diamond, I would worry. You would not just say, hey, I would not just give a 1 carat diamond away, 1 carat diamond necklace away to my mother-in-law. It just wouldn't. Yeah, it's just something I wouldn't do, right? But because the perceived value is lower, um I'm happy to do it, right? Because I don't worry about it as much. It's just a lower end product, and that perceives its value. So that's that when something costs so less, that affects your perception of its value. So that's what the industry, if you look at what the natural industry wants, that's what it wants. It wants for the prices to continue to go down, and they have been going down, and for the product to kind of get ghettoized into its own segment, right? Because if I mean, you can look at places like rarecarat.com. I suggest everybody go there. You can see some very, it's not the greatest product in the world necessarily, but you can see a lot of very low end product, right? And you can see some very cheap product, right? And and some of it's even selling for below light box levels. And the point is, I mean, this is one of the biggest issues, is when consumers come in and they end up buying lab grown, do they spend their whole budget? Do they spend their original intended budget on the diamond, or are they willing to spend less? Because obviously, a lot of independent jewelers are doing very well with lab grown right now. But as for the future, if you're an independent jeweler, you can't make your business on selling $1,000 engagement rings. It's just not how jewelry stores are set up to operate, right? So if in the future you start to see, as these prices continue to fall, it's not going to be economically feasible for jewelers to continue to do so many lab grown engagement rings if the price continues to fall, and if consumers trade down in their budgets. If they maintain their budgets and just get a bigger diamond, then possibly they might get around that issue. But long term, I think jewelers obviously want to sell expensive product, because that is the kind of traditional model of a jewelry store. So this is what the industry hopes will happen. Two markets: natural diamonds cost a lot, used for bridal. They're rare. Lab grown diamonds, they cost a lot less. They're used for fashion, and they're plentiful. Okay, that's what the industry hopes will happen. Obviously, so here's challenges for the natural business. It needs to take care of its ongoing reputational issues in both substance and public relations. And if you any of you followed up this little dust up with Pandora over the last week, the natural business was very offended by some of the things that Pandora, this big charm brand, had to say about natural diamonds. And they came out and said, there's so many people that depend on this industry, which is true. There's millions of people who are dependent on diamond mines, diamond mining, and the diamond industry, and that's all true. And yet, as we know, a lot of times those people are not necessarily treated well. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Like there's no hard and fast rule. I mean, I think diamond mines can be an extremely important engine in development. Unfortunately, they aren't always, and they need to be always, right? We need to address these reputational issues, which continue to haunt the industry. How many, when people think about the industry, think of it in this way: how many industries have had a blockbuster movie with Leonardo DiCaprio talking about how bad the industry is? There's not many industries I can think of that have received that extent of negative publicity. I mean, every industry like Apple, and they've all had bad publicity, but not to the extent of like, hey, this whole industry is terrible and this product is terrible. So the industry has severe reputational problems, and I don't think it's, are they all earned? At this point, probably gold has more issues than diamond. So yes, it's not necessarily fair, but life isn't fair, and certainly marketing isn't fair. And the way the industry built itself up was by projecting a certain image, and if that image is hurt, that's it may not necessarily be fair or right or just or justified, but the fact is that a lot of these issues persist, and we shouldn't be letting them. I mean, we can't have these problems. If you want to convince people that diamonds are a real engine of development, and that it's important to buy diamonds because of all these people that depend on the product, then you have to make sure that the people who do depend on your product have a voice, uh, can talk, and can give a good story. I mean, when you have something like the Natural Diamond Council and the World Diamond Council come out with these statements, defending diamonds, that's fine, that's good. We all, that's okay, but they don't have a lot of credibility. I mean, they're in the end, they're corporate, they're mouthpieces. They're paid to say that. And I think what will give what will give the industry credibility is people from Botswana talking about the benefits that diamonds have brought, people from some of the other countries talking about how dependent they are on diamonds. But the key is, in those situations, it has to be a good deal for them, because otherwise they're going to say things that we're not going to like. So to have credibility, I believe we need to have the people who are affected by the industry, we need to give them more of a voice. But we also have to make sure that they're obviously have a good thing to say. And if we don't treat them properly, they won't. We have to figure out also how to increase margins in the industry. I mean, one of the reasons lab growns have taken off is because they offer better margins, right? I mean, it's simple as better as business. Those margins are decreasing, but at some point, it can't just be a price war all the time. We need to increase marketing. And again, I think a lot of this is kind of leftover from the whole cartel mentality, the fact that the beers controlled this industry for so many years. We need to people need to act on their own. They need to have their own brands. One of the things you see from the lab grown industry is there's so many brands in the industry. There's Diamond Vray or Larkenberry, like all these people trying to build up brands. And to me, that's better than just a bunch of people selling diamonds as a commodity on Blue Nile and trying to undercut each other on margins. We have to get liquidity issues straight as far as banking, and gemological issues straight as far as grading. I mean, there's which is also again something that the lab grown industry is going to have to deal with. We have to be very straight with consumers, and we have to make sure that diamond buying is a pleasant process and is an easy process, and that when we talk about diamonds do good, we have to make sure that diamonds really do good. Natural diamond production is clearly going to fall. Diavik and Akkad, the two Canadian mines are likely to close in a few years. There's still been no major fines. There's certainly anecdotal evidence that the increase in lab grown has made people perhaps more reluctant to invest in new mines. Um, Argyle just closed, so we're definitely getting to a situation where we're going to see less diamond production, and it's possible that if demand stays at the current level, prices will increase because you'll have less supply and better demand. But so far, that hasn't. I think a lot of people were expecting prices to increase dramatically by this point, with production falling, and we haven't really necessarily seen that. So here's challenges for the lab grown business. It needs to make itself more of a reputable business with more long-term players. Right now, I think a lot of the people are short-term players. A lot of Indian companies just getting involved, thinking they're going to do it for 3 years and get out of it because they think eventually the market's going to run out. A lot of investment companies, a lot of these again Silicon Valley companies who like to play fast and loose with the terminology rules and like to play games. They like to antagonize the industry, and it's just not reputable the way things are running in a lot of ways. And certainly a lot of interesting characters on the fringes of the lab grown business. Has to win over the rest of the trade. It can't constantly, the natural and the lab grown can't constantly be fighting. It's not healthy. It hurts the rest of the business. It's, again, you can sit and argue about, carbon footprints and all the rest. And those are extremely important issues. But at the end of the day, people buy diamonds because they feel good. And you can talk about, trading value and all this other stuff as long as you want. But in the end, what drives value, I believe, what drives demand? Demand is driven by clever marketing about why people like diamonds. So you can argue about, Botswana mines and all this stuff. And again, I think those are good messages to get across. But at the end of the day, you have a Bond actress on an island playing with diamonds. I think that's going to drive demand perhaps more than some of these arguments we have. Lab-grown diamonds, as somebody said to me the other day, the same people who ruin the natural business are ruining the lab-grown business. It's extremely price-focused right now. It's commoditized. As I said, there are a lot of brands. But the thing about, which is good, I think it's good that there's different brands and different names and different companies. But the interesting thing is they all have the same pitch. So they all talk about eco and the FTC, and you look at their sites and it's all the same stuff, right? So it's falling into a commoditization model. I've spoken to retailers who say they get calls all day from companies asking for, trying to sell them lab grown diamonds. And it's, I'm approached all the time with people, trying to sell me lab grown diamonds. And some of the numbers are, you're talking about 90% off wrap, 95% off wrap. I mean, when you get to 95%, there's not that much more you can go. You can't sell 100% off wrap because then you're basically giving away the product for free. So there's huge price competition, so there needs to be differentiation. It needs to think about, does it want to be a fashion product or a bridal product? Right now, the main market is bridal because that's where the main jewelry market is. But again, there's certainly the industry perception that it's perhaps better suited for fashion. And one of the things that I'm starting to hear in the market is there's all sorts of quality control issues that there's these things are treated, there's added boron, there's minerals added, and you're starting to see items with the weird yellow tinge with brown tinges and gray tinges and blue tinges. And you do natural diamonds have tinges also, obviously, but in some cases, these products do not look natural, right? They don't look good and they don't look nice. And somebody was saying that they believe that, you would have seen a high-end brand jump into it at some point, but the goods aren't there. They're just not enough nice goods on the market. And, especially some of the newer players who are, again, just short term, they're just churning out stuff, right? Because the way, it's a different kind of mindset, it's a different kind of mentality than the natural business, right? With lab grown, you can churn out whatever you want, right? But the most economical way to do it is to churn out low quality product at a high volume, right? So by doing that and by flooding the market with all sorts of not nice looking stuff, eventually, some of these things you can't tell, but some of the things you can tell. And if, these bluish tinges, people start to notice them, that's going to hurt demand for lab grown diamonds. It'll probably hurt demand for diamonds in general because they just aren't a nice product. You don't want your diamond to have a little gray tinge, right? And a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily noted on GIA reports, but it's important to think about it and to understand that because the production method is different, there's different issues in the lab grown market as far as appearance. And I will say also, again, the Chinese, there's a big challenge from China as far as low cost, lab grown. They're making lots of high pressure, high temperature diamonds. I heard there's a big CVD factory opening up in China. They're not producing bigger stones necessarily yet, but I think they will soon. And again, the analogy the industry always uses is like flat screen TVs, and that they started at a certain price level, and then as the technology got better and as the labor got cheaper, the price went down. As it become less of a unique product, the price began to shrink. And I think, when we see lab grown diamonds fall, it's not necessarily because of the price improvement, because of technological improvements, I should say. That's part of it. But I think the issue was that the margins were incredibly inflated. And when you have competition, it brings the margins down. The idea that lab grown diamonds are an eco-friendly product has been debated. But certainly in China, or in certain Chinese factories, I should say, I don't want to 100% generalize, but the ecological standards are extremely weak, and a lot of the players are associated with the Chinese military. So, people talk about, hey, this is a conflict-free product. If you're owned by the Chinese military and they're fighting people in Hong Kong, maybe it's not a conflict-free product. I don't know. It's hard to make these definitions. I hope I haven't offended anybody, but these are some of the issues I think that are going to come up. I think the lab-grown diamond industry has been given a absurdly free ride by the media, and it's very disappointing to me as a member of media to see some of this stuff come up. But I'm hoping that there will be greater scrutiny of this product, because I think it's important. Here's an interesting chart. You can see these are the sample prices of man-made relative to natural diamonds over 6 years. This is from my friend Paul Zimnisky, who paulzimnisky.com. I suggest everyone go to his site and check out his newsletter and read what he writes. Um, he does kind of spot checks of online, and you can see the incredible price falls of some of these things that a 1 carat man-made started at in 2016. It would cost about $5,300. Now, 5 years later, it costs $2,000. That's a big drop. Man-made, carat and a half, $10,000 to $3,000. That's huge, a third of its value. And during that same period, natural has stayed relatively steady. It hasn't gone up. It's in some cases gone down a little bit. But you're certainly not seeing the dramatic price differences. And again, I would credit that to two things: the fact that it's a limited, that prices of natural goods will always ultimately be limited by what nature provides, but also because I think in a lot of ways the margins of lab-grown diamonds were initially inflated. And the third factor is that technology improves. Let's talk about the trade-in issue. There's reputational risk. A lot of jewelers are nervous about lab-grown diamonds. They don't want to take them back because they feel that they will lose value. Most of them take them on. They buy them. They don't take them on consignment. They take them on consignment. They don't buy them, I should say, because they're worried that they're going to lose value. And again, some people worry that there's going to be some kind of reputational risk if they sell a product for $10,000 and then in 5 years it's worth $1,000. Would that hurt? That's not how jewelers like to do business, and that's not how jewelers have traditionally done business. And I guess the question is, do consumers care, right? Is that something that bothers consumers? I own my apartment, right? And I view it as an asset, right? And it's not something, I have my apartment to live in, so I don't really think about selling it or trade-in value. But I like the idea that at the end of the day, after 30 years or so, I'm going to have something that's an asset, a value, because I've spent a lot of money on it. And to spend a lot of money on something that's eventually going to be worth very little, to me is, that's not something that I look forward to. So the fact that I have something that is of value, even though that's not the main reason I buy it, it's I bought it to live in, but it's a secondary reason. I think that's something that is important to me, and I think it's something that I don't know if younger consumers necessarily think about, or it's in the back of their mind, but it's something that perhaps in a subtle way, maybe we should be reminding them of that this is, an asset with something. You're not going to get full value for it, just like I might not get full value for my apartment. You certainly won't get full value for it in 3 years. And one of the challenges, I think, for the industry is to improve the trade-in product and to find ways for consumers to get better value for their trade-in diamonds. But I think it's something that certainly jewelers care about. We're not 100% sure if consumers care about. A note on ethics, let me just talk quickly. As I said, a lot of diamonds do good. A lot of diamonds do help people in mining areas. That's a fact. And a lot of diamonds do bad. A lot of times they just help the elites. Here's the Miss Dos Santos from Angola. Obviously blood diamonds. You can't generalize about an entire industry, and that goes for lab grown, that goes for jewelry, that goes for diamonds. Diamonds don't necessarily, I wish I could say every diamond does good, but it doesn't. It's a fact, right? And I think that's a challenge that you either figure out a way to make every diamond, have a positive impact and to be better tracked and to be to have a better, more positive effect, or you find a way to marginalize the bad diamonds. Because I think, again, our industry is under a bigger microscope. There was a movie dedicated to denouncing us. Again, I'm not talking about whether it's fair or not fair. It's just a fact, and we have to figure out um, what to do. And again, the same thing is with lab diamonds. They have vulnerability to money laundering, terrorist financing. There are certain companies that are arguably money laundering fronts at this point. That's the They were financed with stolen money, basically. Uh, you know, they also use an extraordinary amount of energy, often energy that's produced from coal power. The Diamond Foundry factory in Washington uses enough energy to power 19,000 US homes. And if you think, it makes sense, because these things, you're trying to create um temperatures as hot as the sun. Obviously, it's going to require tons of energy. So I think the question isn't, are lab grown diamonds good or are mine diamonds good? The question is, what do your diamonds do? Can you vouch for the positive impact of your diamonds? And that involves knowing your customer and having a better control of your sourcing. And that's something that the industry is still, 20 years after conflict diamonds became a big issue, the industry is still trying to figure out, work on that. And it's extremely important. And it's, again, people say, oh, I do think our industry is singled out to some extent, but this is something that's affecting every industry as far as getting better sourcing, making sure that, there's greater transparency in the chain. So making sure your products aren't produced in bad conditions and sweatshops. So this is something that's affecting our industry, but it's affecting a lot of industries. And cell phones, tech companies have the very same issues, as far as things like tantalum and things that are in cell phones. These are all possible conflict minerals. So my conclusions, and then I'll get to the questions. Lab grown, these are first lab grown diamonds. They're here to stay. Some consumers don't see difference. Whoops. So we're going to see, I think, some near-term chaos in the industry. But let's, a lot of people really don't like lab grown diamonds, but let's look at the pluses of them. They could expand the market in that there's no limits on production, and you can actually customize production. They are good, quote unquote, starter jewelry for people. Hey, this is my first diamond, and once people buy diamonds, they tend to buy one or two more. It attracts people who are turned off by the industry. And these last two things are more, I would say, aspirational, but there's a chance to do something really different. There's a chance to grow diamonds in weird shapes and to do all sorts of weird, interesting things with diamonds that you're not constrained by nature, right? You can do anything. You can do interesting shapes. And I think that's one of the missed opportunities we're seeing in the lab grown industry. Is like, here you have this product you can do everything with, and all you're doing is imitating what natural diamonds do and putting down natural diamonds instead of trying to find your own niche. And that's what I don't necessarily understand. And I hope we will soon see a new grading and price scale, because it doesn't make sense for these things to, there's an opportunity for them to have a simpler grading scale. And I think actually that would be positive, since the current grade scale is very confusing to consumers, and the current pricing scale is confusing to consumers. And I think there's a chance to offer a better experience and to kind of reinvent the market. And again, what I see as a missed opportunity is they're basically doing the same thing that natural diamonds do, selling for cheaper. And I don't think there's a long-term future in that. Um, I would say also, when I talk about surviving and thriving, when products aren't differentiated and the only variable becomes price, it becomes a race to the bottom, right? That's basics, right? And not only that, you reward cheating, right? Because the dishonest companies get ahead. So the when you have to differentiate your product, all diamonds shouldn't be sold in the same way. They should be sold in different ways. Um, we're still at a thing where the diamond miners are the only ones who do promotion. And again, with lab grown diamonds, you see a lot of manufacturers do their own promotion, but we don't see that in the natural business. And it's something that people, if you really want to make yourself stick out, you have to make sure that your product is different, is something that people want. And I think that's partly the cartel mindset that this industry still 20 years after De Beers said we're not a cartel anymore, it still expects De Beers and the diamond producers to kind of take care of it and to promote the product. And in the end, you have to promote your own product. You have to find your buyers. And you know, if you don't, then you're just going to be in a race to the bottom and you're going to hurt your margins. And again, that's the same for lab grown and the same for natural. The industry needs to become younger. I think most people agree with that. It, especially in the United States, needs to become more diverse. We're dealing with a more diverse consumer base. So we need to become more diverse ourselves. And, diversity is a hot topic. But again, I would urge people to look at it from a business standpoint, and that, there's a huge Hispanic consumer base in the United States that, has traditionally been very big fans of jewelry. A lot of people feel that consumer base is underserved. There's a huge, even the United States, the Indian community, traditionally big fans of jewelry. You don't see a lot of jewelry stores necessarily catering to that specific demographic. So, we need to think about, it's not just one customer, it's a lot of customers. And one of the ways you reach those customers is to have people who look like those customers at the counter. So it needs to be more diverse. It needs to listen to more to the consumers. It needs to have more of a conversation. And it needs to look at ethics and social responsibility, not just as a marketing hook, but as a way of life, as something that's built into our DNA, and as something that we all live by and care about, because again, consumers expect it. And I think our industry doesn't have a lot of leeway on that. So it's important. I think it makes you feel good. I think when you have a socially responsible product, it helps as far as your talent pool. There's just a lot of reasons that we need to do it. And, we can't just have scandal after scandal. I mean, I can name 4 or 5 in big industry figures, or people who used to be big industry figures, who are currently in scandals or have been in scandals. I mean, we can't keep doing this. And, one of the things that with the beer supplier of choice is it greatly narrowed down the amount of companies in the industry that were site holders. And that was it did it deliberately. But when I look in, and, when I first started, there was these, very small kind of Antwerp firms, in New York firms, and they were just comprised of very decent people. And the ethics were beyond question. And I think when you start to focus more on the big companies, plenty of them are great and plenty of them have excellent ethics. But, sometimes you don't get big by being nice, or by playing by the rules. So I'm not suggesting that a big company is bad necessarily, but I think that we need to think about what kind of, how we may manage to keep this industry as above board as possible, because otherwise it's not going to survive. It's going to bite us, and it's bitten us so many times in the past. Thank you. If you want a copy of this presentation, send me an email and I'm going to answer questions. I have a podcast, I have a Twitter feed. I wrote a novel. It's a mystery novel. Can you see it here? It's called The Murder Is Forever. It's all fuzzy, but anyway, it's more of a fun book. It's not necessarily something that'll give you big insight into the business, but I know a lot of people in the industry have enjoyed it and enjoyed seeing their industry in a fictionalized form. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to take your questions now. Congratulations on your debut novel. I understand it's going to be a trilogy. So when do we expect the second book? That's from Anil Praghabar. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm finishing up the second book right now. It will probably be released next year. We're hoping February, around for Valentine's Day. We were hoping to get it this year, but it's I take a long time, unfortunately. So yes, but the second book will be called Murder Is Not a Girl's Best Friend. So we have the two big diamond slogans reflected in those books. And I hope you enjoy it. I worked very, very hard on it, and I hope you enjoyed the first one too. And I appreciate everybody. He said, in the fight between the natural diamond and the LGD guys, is anyone thinking about the consumers and their needs? I mean, I think people believe they are and think they are, but again, I just don't think it's productive. And I think in the end, it's going to hurt everybody. George Baker, what is the best way to find suppliers from overseas? I'm a retailer in America. I mean, obviously my company has a huge trade show, so it's going to be open in August, so I invite you to go there. Ask around, get recommendations. Just keep I would say also, don't just buy on price, buy on reputation, buy on people who seem honest and seem good. How will lab-grown diamonds survive if they do not have any resale value? It's from Ian Paul. Again, plenty of people buy CZs. De Beers executive, interestingly, once told me the stat: more CZ is sold in volume than diamonds, right? So, it's the resale value question, again, as I mentioned, it's kind of open as far as whether consumers care. I think jewelers definitely care, and it's a big issue. And I would say, again, in addition to the resale value issue, I think the fact that so much of this stuff is low quality, I think that's going to hurt the market eventually too. What benefit does increasing demand of lab-grown diamonds provide to cutting and polishing labor? I think that's actually an interesting issue, because I think it's actually helped the Indian cutting industry to cut lab growns, and they're actually, I mean, it's very interesting that they're cut in a different way. Yeah, I think it has I think it has offered certain benefits to cutters and polishers. What I think there's a huge danger of it being the kind of boom and bust market that we see in the natural diamonds. Like, for example, right now, Pandora is introducing a lab-grown diamond collection, right? So that stimulates demand because people have to produce diamonds for that collection, right? So all of a sudden that increases demand. But a lot of the demand we're seeing in lab-grown diamonds is in the wholesale thing. We're seeing bigger sales. Clearly, we're seeing bigger retail sales, but we're not necessarily, I think, when people are getting calls all day about lab grown diamonds, you're not necessarily, you're not, the consumer demand isn't necessarily there as, it's not necessarily growing as far as the trade demand. And let's say Pandora goes into it, and let's say Pandora gets a whole bunch of other companies to go into it. At the end of the day, these items have to sell or they're going to pull out, right? They're not going to sell lab grown diamonds, if there's no market for them. So, and that's not necessarily cut on the product. They might not have good design or designs that consumers like. So, the idea is, so again, that's what happens in the natural industry. Consumer demand, let's say, increases by 1%, and then all of a sudden wholesale activity increases by 5%, right? It's what my old friend Chaim Evan Zohar used to call the ripple effect, that the idea that, people sometimes play to perceived consumer demand rather than actual consumer demand. And that's what we're seeing with lab grown, that there's this whole, everybody that is getting into it, right? But what happens when, some of these companies decide, well, we don't want this isn't working out, or, we're the jewelers aren't interested anymore, then all of a sudden you're going to see a huge kind of contraction in the wholesale demand, right? And that's further going to hurt the price. What Gary W, what is the social economic system would be in terms of natural diamond industry around the world post-pandemic when things get back to normalcy? I mean, I think we're seeing, if you look at De Beers results and you look at Arosa results, we're seeing results from the natural diamond players. And again, it's just a matter of promoting the product, of making sure that that people want the product. My friend Martin DeWitt says, Rob, I think you might be doing Chatham a bit of a disservice. Okay, here's Crystal Reinberger. After the hype dies down, this could be unique like Chatham's. And then Martin DeWitt says, Rob, I think you might be doing Chatham a bit of a disservice. The beauty of his product is exactly strength. Truth be told, you can own a far more beautiful Chatham gem dollar for dollar in comparison to a natural gem of the same size, color, and clarity. That's correct. I agree with that. And yet people see it as a quote unquote lesser product. And what it is, in many ways, a nicer product than you can get natural. But why, again, why do people look at it that way? I guess, and it's because of how much it costs, right? You look at $100 perfect Chatham, very different than you look at a $2,000 imperfect, natural ruby, right? And that's perhaps the difference. And I agree with you. And I think that if the lab grown people, continue to churn out substandard product with these weird tinges and treatments and stuff like that, I think that could be an issue for the whole industry. Hi, Escotari. Hi, Rob. I'm a diamond trader manufactured in India. How can I market my Melly goods to retailers in America? Well, I would certainly suggest you find a unique product hook. If you're just offering Melly goods to retailers in America, that's tougher. It's not impossible, but it's, it becomes a price game. So if there is any way you can find to make yourself unique, whether it's how you market them or the branding behind them or the cuts you offer or just anything that can set yourself apart, I think that's, and then you develop a market for that product. That's important. That's obviously also extremely expensive. I'm not suggesting that's easy, but that's generally how people do things in other industries. And obviously, again, my company has a trade show, which I'm not here to promote, but we advertise, and it's always a good way to meet people. And I think, again, I think retailers in America are always looking for good, trustworthy, honest vendors that they can rely on, because even now it's you don't see it so much. Nikesh Sharma says, eventually, if natural diamond production going to fall, then in the long run, the price of natural diamonds going to increase unwaveringly very high, isn't it? In theory, theoretically, yet that hasn't happened, right? Because natural diamond production, has fallen certain years. It depends on demand and keeping demand up, right? As long as people want natural diamonds and the supply is less, people will want them. But if we don't promote the product, then it won't happen. George Baker, what government regulation for lab grown diamonds to keep in mind? I mean, obviously, I hope I'm not going too fast, by the way. I know I'm a New Yorker, so I talk very fast. So there's not much I can do about that. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm sure you're used to it, having dealt with your share of New Yorkers. What are government regulations for lab-grown diamonds to keep in mind? Obviously, the most important one is the Federal Trade Commission guides to make sure that you disclose them and make sure you're honest about their origin. Veronica de Beaumont, for your information, diamond content produces lab-grown diamonds, very low carbon footprints, 20 kilograms for CO2 for one cut carat. That's fine. I'm not denying that, and I think that's good. But again, that's not necessarily true of the entire industry. I'm taking what you're saying at your word, and I'm sure it is. But the point is, that doesn't mean that lab-grown diamonds are more eco-friendly as a rule. It just means that your particular lab-grown diamonds are more eco-friendly. So it's not about a whole category of diamonds being one is quote unquote better than the other. It's more, okay, if you have certain claims, you should make them. So it's about setting your particular product apart, not necessarily setting your carbon, your particular aspect apart. And again, certain, I will say that, carbon footprint is extremely important, and climate change is extremely important. I don't think anybody's denying those are real issues. However, you also have to think about the people who are, affected by diamond mining, and some do extremely well with it. And if that disappears tomorrow, you're going to have some catastrophic effects on some extremely poor countries. So again, it's something to keep in mind. I've just been speaking to the people from Fairmind, which is a kind of gold that helps artisanal diggers, particularly in Colombia and Peru. And you can check it out at fairmind.org. And it's a very nice product, and it helps poor people. And it's specifically made for that. And it has a real issue with demand, because a lot of people will just go for recycled gold, seeing that as a better alternative, when you could make an argument that while recycled gold, certainly at its best, when it's truly recycled, doesn't hurt anybody, something like fair mine gold actually makes improvement with people's lives. Brenda, great coverage of industry changes. Thank you. Nikesh Sharma, do you have any example of doing something creative, something different in the diamond industry? I think there's some interesting ideas out there. I think Signet's doing some interesting things. Yeah, there are some interesting ideas out there. I think the thing is, once somebody gets a cool idea, everybody else jumps on it. But for a while there was I don't know what happened to it, but I remember there was talk of a Serena Williams jewelry line. I think those kind of things are just great. And I think those are huge differentiators and benefits for the product. Clark, actually, I want to talk to you today, Clark, if you have a moment. Differentiation and a relevant value proposition are key for the continued success of both naturals and lab-grown diamonds. I agree. And let me look at the chat. How many consumers go to Pandora to buy diamond jewelry? So what's the fuss all about? I would agree with that. And I think this Pandora situation was more of a public relations issue rather than an actual business issue, in that Pandora, by its own admission, didn't use a lot of diamonds. I think that's it. I think that any other questions before I go? Any other comments? I really appreciate the great questions and interesting feedback. And if there's anything you think I'm off base about, or anything you want to discuss or argue about or set me clear about or give me a different insight about, I'm always interested in hearing. My email is rbates@jckonline.com. We have a podcast. We like to talk to people. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and to hear what you have to say. And I hope I've given you some insights. So thank you very much. And if there's nothing else, I guess that's I'll return it to my hosts.
Thank you for sharing your valuable time and expertise. We would like to thank the audience, and we hope you enjoyed the session. If you have any further questions, you can email it on info@gematlas.com. That is info@gematlas.com. And we will forward the same to Rob. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.